G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trevor Hartley from the London School of Business and Finance, and today we're going to be looking at the topic of the principles of marketing. We've got Mr. Steve Pemberton with us on the panel today.
Hi Trevor.
Steve, if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief introduction to yourself.
Yeah, my name's Steve Pemberton. I've had a career based in sales and marketing. The first 22 years were in business-to-business chemical services environment. In the last 10 years I've been working within the retail sector on branding and brand management, and so I've got a reasonable understanding of the subject of sales and marketing.
Well, fantastic, I'm sure you do. Before we jump into the case study, which is what our learners would have been looking at, I'd like to take a step back and just look at the whole concept of marketing. Often people, when you go to businesses, think that marketing really doesn't serve a hard, fast role when you look at an organization. And perhaps just to start us off, what are your thoughts on marketing as a function and how it fits into an organization?
Well, Trevor, I think the whole purpose of an organisation is to win and serve customers, and that ethos must sit at the heart of every successful business. And I think that marketing, sales and customer acquisition are at the core of that. So I see that marketing is part of that customer acquisition and customer retention process, and therefore is really the hub of the business. Sales and marketing really sit as part of that same process, in my view.
I've heard different arguments. I've heard people say sales and marketing, similar function, similar audience, go for it. I've heard other people say sales and marketing, two totally separate disciplines. Don't get them confused. You get them confused at your own peril. What's your thoughts on that?
I disagree fundamentally. That they are not part of the same process. They are sister processes, and you don't get one without the other. They're both part of the customer acquisition process. They should be integrated as tightly as possible into that. Depending on what sector you're in, will really influence the weight you put into marketing as opposed to the weight you put into selling. From my experience in a business-to-business environment, marketing has a less of a participation than selling activities, but it is an enabling activity. Proper marketing enables good selling. In a business-to-consumer, B2C type of market, you don't see as much selling. I think that's a mistake in some organisations, that they forget how to sell. But they rely much more on marketing in creating a brand and managing a brand. So in a B2C, I would say marketing is the pivot of it. In a B2B, it is a great enabling force for effective selling. And both of those sit together in a customer acquisition programme.
So that's a very interesting concept, is actually looking at your market and saying, from a business-to-business perspective, a B2B perspective, you may have a different ratio of optimal sales versus marketing, whereas in a business-to-consumer, B2C environment, you're actually going to have probably a greater ratio of marketing to create the brand and less so of sales activity.
Yeah, that's definitely the way I see things, based on my experience, that marketing in a B2B is really softening up the target for the artillery to go in, who are the foot soldiers, the salesmen to go in and win that order. And they use marketing, they use materials, they will use products that have come from the marketing process. They'll be targeted at markets and sectors that the marketing department has researched. So that the marketing in that scenario or in that arena is really an enabling activity. I describe it as the artillery for the foot soldiers. It helps them win the battle. In the business to consumer environment, there is less of the foot soldier work and a lot more of the artillery work in winning the customer across.
Well, that's a really interesting analogy, and I think that's something that businesses out there would probably be able to say, based on our research, looking at our target audience, from a historical perspective, this is what we're expecting to do. But in both of those, I think what is absolutely critical is you mentioned that in the customer acquisition process, marketing plays an incredibly pivotal role. And I think as we move to our case study, we'll see that. Moving to our case study, we're looking at Nike, which must be one of the biggest brands globally, incredibly successful. And the specific case study is looking not so much at the brand of Nike, but really what type of role the marketing function could have played in the environment we find ourselves in now. So just as a bit of a recap, we've got Tiger Woods, one of the phenomenons of world golf. Incredible rise to the top. He's been just an absolute icon in the sporting arena for so many years. He's been the face of Nike Golf. They grew the Nike Golf brand from zero revenue to $600 million revenue a year. And this is really on Tiger's back. You have a situation in the end of 2009 where from a personal situation he has troubles in his personal life, and all of a sudden there's an impact on the Nike brand. And the case study we're looking at here is really asking the question, would the marketing department have had a role to play in managing the situation? Would it have been a case of, you know what, the brand is so strong now, we've had years of growth, our customers are loyal, not much involvement needed. In fact, probably the less the better, let's not make a big thing of this. Would it have been that, you know what, we need a significant intervention over here, this is definitely going to be affecting our market? Or would it have been a case of, well, you know, let's support Tiger through this from a personal perspective, but other than that, we think our brand's sturdy enough to weather the storm. Your thoughts on the case in terms of what the marketing function would have been doing? How would they have positioned themselves? What activity would have they been involved in?
Well, clearly I wasn't part of the Nike marketing team at the time, but standing several steps removed, I have a perception. And the perception of a brand like Nike is that they would be employing a large team of very competent professional marketing people, and they would not have the arrogance to believe that their brand was in a position where it could just take this without any action whatsoever. I think that the marketing department would have understood their customers' demographics, and they would have understood them in terms of what country they were in, what age group they were in, and all the things that span off from that. And they would have looked at what would be potentially what-if scenarios. What if we lose a proportion of our customers that identify strongly with Tiger's wife, maybe female golfers in the 20 to 30, 30 to 35 age group? What happens if we lose them? What impact does that have on our overall mix by product, by sector, by geography? And they would have run algorithms, and they would have known or guessed the impact of the adverse effect that it was going to have on their brand across their customer base. And then they would have computed the risk factors to say, well, are we prepared to take that risk? Is it a risk worth taking? When they started backing him, was it a risk worth taking? Yes, it was, because they backed a winner, and his career went global, and he was on the newspapers and the news bulletins on TV. Everyone likes to identify with a winner. So in that scenario, when they were looking at, well, what's the impact, they would have analysed it, I think, in huge amounts of detail, along with their finance people, and they would have measured the risk.
Now, two interesting things there that you've said. Firstly, I think there could be a view out there amongst people who aren't marketers that marketing is a bit airy-fairy. It's the fun stuff, the creative stuff. They get to, have all the glitz and the glamour off the back of the real workhorses, like the finance department, for example. I have some accounting friends. This is why I can talk like this. But what I'm hearing is marketing is really a science. You have to understand the demographics. You have to understand your target audience. And unless you're taking the time to research, unless you're taking the time to really understand marketing as a science, you could really be doing so at your peril.
Yes, I mean, to say I agree with that with blinding passion would be an understatement. Marketing is fun. Selling is fun. Anything is fun if you enjoy doing it. But for sure. But it's more than that. It's hard work. And nothing happens by accident. So you have to invest your time, you have to invest your intellect, you have to have tools, you have to have quality information that's derived from the data so that you can make decisions which are based on accurate understanding of your customer and knowing your customer and really being at one with them and trying to predict their behaviour based on the data that you have. So yes, marketing is fun and it is fluffy and it is creative and it has those elements, but it also has underpinning it an engine room that's based on truth. Who are my customers? How much money have they got? Where do they sit in that quality value equation? What do I need to do to retain them, to win them, to get repeat sales from them? And we're almost into the retailing side of it, but it is an absolute science, and it is a fascinating science once you start getting engaged with it. The more you see of it, and the more you see of how human behaviour can be influenced by things that certainly I'd never thought of. What music's playing in the supermarkets at a different time of day, and how you walk around a supermarket. I know perhaps it's not the Nike thing, but the whole science of shopping and buying and customers is, to me, absolutely fascinating.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think you have made some really good points there around the marketing as a science. I want to throw a question into the mix over here. We know Nike stuck by Tiger Woods through the whole process, the whole ordeal that he went through. There were other sponsors, though, like Buick, for instance, who had been with Tiger Woods for around 9 years, and they withdrew their sponsorship. Looking at that versus Nike, is there a difference there? Would they have gone through the same process to reach perhaps a different solution?
Absolutely, Trevor. I think that they would have gone through exactly the same process, but come to a different decision for their brand and their product for exactly the right reasons. So taking different actions in the face of the same circumstances is completely justifiable, providing you understand why you've done it. And it's not just a backlash because of personal prejudice. You're taking that decision on behalf of your customers because you think that's how they want your brand to behave in those circumstances. So again, I would guess, not being part of the Buick marketing department either, that Buick would have made exactly the same analysis that Nike made. And they concluded for their products, for their brand, in their target sectors, that the adverse impact that Tiger Woods would have on their demographic was not acceptable, and they would make a decision to drop him.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's bring this to a close here. We've discussed the principles of marketing, understood that it is a real science, understood that when you're looking at marketing, you have to understand your market. Absolutely critical. In the scenario that we have with Nike, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit. Our learners have had to choose a suggested solution, a preferred solution. Bearing in mind you weren't in the marketing department of Nike, as you've mentioned, if you had to, in your perspective or with your view, pick one of the solutions, solution A, solution B, solution C, which one of those would you have gone for?
I would have gone categorically without any hesitation for solution B.
So looking at playing a significant role, not resting on your laurels, really getting engaged in the situation to lessen or mitigate the risk of what it could have happened.
Absolutely, and having seen the things they did with Tiger Woods in terms of making him come across contrite and that, I'm sure that was all part of their plan, and I would wholeheartedly endorse that as the correct approach to take in those circumstances.
Wonderful. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a fantastic discussion with Steve Pemberton. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Trevor.
We hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you.